Tonight we spoke about Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul, the highest of Elul, the vitality of Elul, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, and us, how this all relates to our service and our efforts in coming closer to God. And 18, of course, is numerical value of Chai, of life. So we call it Chai Elul, the life of Elul. And today is its life. Meaning whatever we've been saying about soul searching, about repentance, about introspection, about preparing for the holidays, about outwitting the Satan by coming to court before he shows up because you already returned to God now. We speak about them and hopefully you're putting into practice and hopefully you're trying and hopefully I'm trying. But today is the day we get invigorated. We get alive in this. And from today until Rosh Hashanah is exactly 12 days, 12 days and counting. Why 12? Because it's one day a month. So today, Monday, was to rectify the past, month of Tishrei, the first month of the Jewish calendar, the month of the high holidays, and resolve for the future. And so to all the next days. Tomorrow is for the second month, and Wednesday is for the third month. And you could say, my gosh, I barely remember what I did yesterday. You think I remember what I did 12 months ago? A whole month in one day? I don't remember a thing. All right, well, if you don't remember a thing, you're probably normal. Unless something was really, really good or really the opposite. It sort of blurs. That makes sense. I tried to think today for like a millisecond about last year. Tishrei is the month of the holiday. It stands out in your head. And I think of some things, but I couldn't exactly think of what I did wrong or what I should have done better, though I'm sure there are plenty of things I did wrong and I should have done better. But in general, it's like picking up the pace, intensifying. Like, we got to make this happen. We got to make this good. This is really significant because, hey, every day now of my service is somehow relating to an entire month of the past, an entire month of the future. So it's the same work we've officially been doing now for 2 weeks, but it's more intense because now whatever I did today right was to rectify an entire month of last year and to prepare for an entire month of the coming year. And so to tomorrow and so to the next day and every single day for the next 12 days or 11 now until Rosh Hashanah. Chai Elul, the life of Elul, the vitality of Elul, the energy of Elul, when we start really picking up the speed in terms of our introspection and reflection and return to God, is the birthday of two Hasidic luminaries, the Baal Shem Tov, who was born a while ago, 1698, that exact same date of his birthday when he was 26, meaning now we're up to 1724, is when a very high soul of a very great, great Jew that had passed away thousands of years before, began appearing to him to teach him the light within Torah and Kabbalah, as is understood above in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, where this great tzaddik was. His name was Achia Hashiloni. He actually lived in the times of the enslavement in Egypt. He was part of the exodus from Egypt. He entered Israel, and he was a great prophet. And he was in heaven, in Shemayim, in Garden of Eden above for thousands of years. And he came down as a soul, not as a soul in the body, but as a soul, to teach the Baal Shem Tov from when he was 26 years old. For 10 years, from when he was 26 until he was 36, the Baal Shem Tov led a group of hidden tzaddikim, meaning very, very godly people that pretended they were not. They wandered from place to place among the simple people. They would tell stories about the special qualities of Jews, about character refinement, about awe of God. And basically, they're trying to lift up the spirits of the Jewish people. The Jewish people at that time had been going through very horrible stuff. This wasn't so long after Chmielnicki totally wiped out Eastern European Jewry to a tremendous degree. So the Jews were very, very devastated physically. And also a lot of them were very devastated because they didn't really feel they had this connection to God because they weren't Torah scholars. They couldn't afford to be Torah scholars. From young children, they had to work. Parents didn't have the money to teach them, and they didn't have the time to learn because they needed to work and earn what they could to help their parents. So the vast masses of the Jewish people were unlearned, unlettered, and not really feeling they had a relationship with God because God is in Torah, but they couldn't learn. So the Baal Shem Tov and this group of hidden scholars went around acting as if they were simple people, but with a message, the message being how wonderful every Jew is, how precious to God every Jew is, how God has such love for each Jew. Each Jew is his only child. The Baal Shem Tov was the one that taught us that each Jew is God's only child, as if, so to speak, born to him in his old age. That's how much love God has for every Jew, for a Torah scholar and not for a Jew who can't even read Hebrew. And this really lifted up the spirits of the simple people, the common people, which was the bulk of the Jewish people, especially after the massacres of Chmelnytsky, where people lost all their possessions. So they all had to send their children to work, and therefore the children didn't have the opportunity to learn. And maybe the children were orphaned and they didn't have parents to take care of them, and they didn't have the opportunity to learn. This was very common in those days in Eastern Europe. So the Baal Shem Tov really revitalized these simple Jewish people with this message of love, of joy, of connection to God, the value of the deed, how much God loves them. And even if they can barely read, and what they're reading, they have a lot of mistakes in, God loves every word they say to him. So this was what the Baal Shem Tov did for 10 years, until he was 36. When he was 36, based on the demands of his spiritual mentor, Achia Shiloni, the Baal Shem Tov very reluctantly began publicly teaching. Meaning until that time, he was a hidden tzaddik. Nobody knew of him, besides like his wife. Nobody knew of his greatness. But when he was 36, he revealed himself to the world. And that's why he became called the Baal Shem Tov. His name, he has a name. His name was Yisrael, which of course is the name for the Jewish people. But Baal Shem Tov means master of the good name, master of God's name. Because the Baal Shem Tov worked miracles and revealed profound secrets of God. So that was the Baal Shem Tov, whose birthday is today, and who did much to revitalize Jewry, and especially Jewry of Eastern Europe, which of course spread to the rest of the world, but definitely is where we come from. So he definitely revitalized the Jewry of our ancestors. On the same day he was born, in 1745, the Alter Rebbe was born. The Alter Rebbe, Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi, the first leader of Chabad. And at first, this was a secret holiday. People didn't know about it. But in 1845, 100 years to the day of the Alter Rebbe's birth, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, shared the secret with his sons, telling them not to spread it. And then gradually, we, the regular people, got to know and celebrate this special day as the days of birth of the luminaries of Hasidus, the Baal Shem Tov, who started the Hasidic movement, and the Alter Rebbe, who founded Chabad Hasidism. So obviously, it's such a special day. I was like, whoa, we got to talk about something special on this day. Of course, so everything we do hopefully is special, everything we do is significant, but I wanted to do something connected to the day. So I thought about one aspect of the Alter Rebbe's life that I thought really is relevant to us.
Is Alter Rebbe the author of Tanya?
Yes, the Alter Rebbe is the author of Tanya that we learned many years ago and refer to sometimes. Alter Rebbe is Yiddish, means the old rabbi, because this was the name that he was not referred to as when he was Rebbe, and also not the name during his son's succession after him, but probably during the time of the third Rebbe, or maybe even the fourth, but for sure not before the third, he was referred to as the Alter Rebbe, the old one, the original one. In Hebrew, they say Admor HaZaken, which means the same thing in Hebrew. And he's referred as Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi. Shner, which means Shnei Or, two lights, because he had an unusual genius that his light of Torah was shining in both domains, both in the revealed Torah. He wrote a Shulchan Aruch. He wrote, his first writing was explaining all the laws of brachas. It was brilliant and made such clarity, which he published initially anonymously and later with his name. And then, of course, he wrote the Tanya, the foundation of Chabad Hasidism. So he had the light of the revealed aspect of Torah and the light of the inner dimension of Torah. And by him, it was all one. So there are many, many things that we could talk about today. Again, we could talk about how we get revitalized in our service because it's chai, it's life. Let's add life to our service. We could talk about the idea of one day for a month and what that means practically. And there's so many things we could talk about within the Baal Shem Tov, but I chose to pick one little aspect in the life of the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi, whose birthday is today, because I felt it was relevant to us. I'm sure there are many other things relevant. This is what came to me to discuss. So in the journey of the Alter Rebbe had to journey on his own to become a chassid, to become a follower of the Baal Shem Tov and his successor, the Maggid of Mezrich. Now, why is that so unusual? Because the Alter Rebbe's father already walked that road. He already worked very hard on that journey. The Alter Rebbe's father's name was Reb Baruch. And Reb Baruch, as is written in Yiddish, in Hebrew, and in English, in the memoirs, this book is called Memoirs, it's 2 volumes, which tells us the story of the life of Reb Baruch. Reb Baruch, the Alter Rebbe's father, who was orphaned at a young age, was very, very idealistic. He was a brilliant Torah scholar, very, very holy and righteous, and he really wanted to search and find what is the right path in serving God. And in those days, there was a lot of argumentation on this subject because there was, of course, the original traditional approach. And then there was this new approach called Hasidus. And some people were for it and some people were against it. And there was a lot of passions, and the people against it were very passionately against it. And the people for it were very fervently for it. It was a very tumultuous time. And Reb Baruch, father of the Alter Rebbe, from a young boy, he was an orphan. He was a self-made man. He wasn't following the road of his father and mother who had passed away. They were both very holy people, but he was carving his own road. He didn't take financial assistance from anyone, and he chose his own spiritual assistance. He really wanted to figure it out himself. And after a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort, he adopted the road of the Baal Shem Tov and Hasidus. And again, in those days, it was not a simple choice. There was a lot of fear and a lot of opposition to this, at that time, very new road. But Reb Baruch was searching for the truth. And he found in Hasidus the ultimate truth, and this was his road. So when his first son was born, Reb Shneur Zalman, who became ultimately the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidus, it should have been just a natural thing. His father worked and worked and worked, and he would just be born into it. And that's actually something we do for our children. It's called the merit of the parents, which means anything you work on hard, when your children are born, they get it as a free gift. If before your children were born, you worked on refining how you speak, your relationships with people, how you eat kosher or give charity, your kids get it automatically. That's what they're born into. That's the merit of our parents. So the Baal Shem Tov had already been chosen by Reb Baruch, the Alter Rebbe's father, way before the Alter Rebbe was born. And the Baal Shem Tov told Reb Baruch, when his wife, Rivka, was pregnant with the Alter Rebbe, don't tell him about me. Keep him secret from me. Don't let him know about me. Don't let him know you follow me. He has to choose me on his own. Now, the Baal Shem Tov was very excited about this yet unborn child. The Baal Shem Tov told his followers, there's a new soul coming into this world, a soul that's never been here before. That, in those days, we're talking about the mid-1700s, already didn't happen. By that time, everyone were reincarnations. We'd all been here many, many times. The Alter Rebbe was a new soul, so pure he had never been in this world yet. And the Baal Shem Tov was so happy on the day that the Alter Rebbe was born, which is the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov told his followers, a new soul entered this world. This is such a special, 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 special event. But yet, he told Reb Baruch, don't tell your son anything about me. Not at all. The only time he let Reb Baruch bring his son to him was on the day of the Alter Rebbe's Upsharon. Upsharon, traditionally, this isn't mandatory according to Jewish law, but it's a very strong minhag, very strong Jewish custom, not to cut a boy's hair until he's 3. And then when he's 3, with the cutting of the hair, it's like inaugurating him into serving God. So on that day, when the Alter Rebbe, little Reb Shneur Zalman, turned 3, his mother took him. She didn't say where he was going. And they came to a certain place. He didn't know where it was. And a man there came and cut his hair. And the Alter Rebbe's tiny child, but he was so holy, he sensed the holiness of this person, of this Jew. And he said to his mother, who is he? And all his mother would say was, grandfather. And afterwards, several times, he kept thinking back to that holy, holy person. He said, who was he? His mother just said a grandfather. That's all he was told. Because he had to come to him on his own. And it wasn't so simple. And it didn't happen like, when he was a young child. Even though he could have learned from the Baal Shem Tov, he was old enough that he could have been by the Baal Shem Tov's court? No. The Baal Shem Tov said he has to come to him on his own. So the Alter Rebbe didn't have that opportunity. For the first 15 years of his life, the Baal Shem Tov was still alive. The Alter Rebbe never saw him except that one time. What was he doing for all those years? He was a brilliant and dedicated student of Torah. And what did he do all day? Was study Torah. Incredibly. He got married when he was 15, which was normal in those days. He was supported by a very wealthy father-in-law, which was the custom then, that very wealthy men would marry their daughters to great Torah scholars and support them, and then have the merit of having this amazing Torah scholar as a son-in-law and father of their grandchildren. And that's how his life was. He would learn Torah from when he was married. Didn't mean he still learned Torah day and night in his house of his father. And he became 20. And by the time he was 20, the Alter Rebbe realized he's missing something. He's missing something. What was he missing? He was absolutely pure. He was absolutely godly. He was a tzaddik, completely holy. He learned Torah day and night. He had nothing to do with the world. He didn't need to have anything to do with the world. All he did was sit and study and learn. But he knew he was missing something. He knew all of Talmud, all of Jewish law. He knew Kabbalah, esoteric dimension, but he was missing something. And he thought, I have to travel and I have to go on my own and find what I'm missing. In those days, there were two centers of Torah, Vilna and Mizrich. Vilna, which was led by a great Torah scholar, a great Talmudic genius, the Vilna Gaon. That was the seat of Talmud learning. And Mizrich is where the Hasidic movement was centered. This was now already after the time of the Baal Shem Tov. He had passed away 5 years before. And it was the time of his successor, Reb Dov Ber, who's called the Maggid of Mezrich. And the Alter Rebbe was torn. He had to choose one of these two places to go to and find what he's missing. And the Alter Rebbe said, well, I know a little bit how to learn, so I'm not going to go to Vilna, because that's where they teach you how to learn, but I know a little bit already how to learn after 20 years of dedicating his life to Torah with an unbelievably brilliant mind and purity of heart. But in Mezhebush, I hear they teach you how to pray, and I don't know how to pray at all. So I'm going to go to Mezhebush. And he traveled. He didn't have money. He never dealt with money, so he didn't have money. And he would do manual labor that he had never done in his life, chopping wood, working in the fields, walking most of the way, till he got to Mezhebush. Okay, so now should be the happy ending, but it didn't happen so fast. He came, and honestly, he wasn't so impressed. He didn't see what he thought he would see. He thought all the people there would be full of something that he didn't notice that they had. He heard the Maggid, the leader of the Hasidic movement at that time, Reb Dov Ber, talking to the common people and speaking to the crowds, and it wasn't something that moved him especially. And he said, all right, I came, and I don't know. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not what they cracked it up to be. I guess this isn't for me. So he decided he's going to go back. Maybe he should go to Vilna. Maybe he should just go home. Maybe he's being silly. Maybe what he's missing, everyone's missing and no one has it. So what's he, breaking his head against a wall for? So he went to the Maggid's house to take his leave respectfully, to say goodbye. I mean, he was disappointed, but he was still a mensch. And when he went into the Maggid's house, and there were a lot of people there was always a lot of people, crowds of common people of some level of Torah scholar, of greater Torah scholars. And the Alter Rebbe just stood in the crowd to say goodbye. And the Maggid saw him and stared at him, looking right through him. And then, even though there was all these people there, the Maggid started talking to him. And the Maggid started answering his questions. Because the Alter Rebbe had prepared questions. He was looking for a master. He was looking for someone to guide him. And he had questions that he wanted answers to. But he never even asked the Maggid the questions, because when he was there, he didn't feel this was his guide. He didn't feel this person had what he needed. So he never even asked him those questions. But the Maggid, just staring at the Alter Rebbe and staring straight inside of him and piercing him, answered one after another, simply, clearly, to the point, every single question. And when that happened, the Alter Rebbe realized this is the master. This is the one that could give me what my soul craves. It is out there. Someone can give it to me. And he went to the Maggid and he begged him, I need to be part of your inner circle. I can't be here like all these people in the crowds hearing this, the relatively simple things you tell these relatively simple people. It's great for them. It's not giving me what I need. But I know there's that inner circle of people much older than me, much older. The Alter Rebbe was only 20 at the time. All great Torah scholars. I need to be in that circle. I need to get from you personally directly. That took a lot of guts. Maybe it was a little bit of impudence and guts and tremendous desire. And the Mizracha Maggid accepted him into his inner circle. He was the youngest by far. All the others were very illustrious great rabbis in their own right, leaders of Jewish people, all of them tzaddikim, very holy, holy, holy Jews. And every day the Maggid would teach this inner circle, the deep secrets from the Baal Shem Tov. And that's what nurtured the soul of the Alter Rebbe and enabled him to become the Alter Rebbe and eventually continue on and found Chabad Hasidus, becoming the Maggid's greatest student. So this is a piece of history, and this isn't really a history class, but I thought this was very telling because it didn't have to be that way. Again, Reb Baruch was a follower of the Baal Shem Tov. Reb Baruch searched and found. Why couldn't he just give this over to his son the same way he gave over to his son all the rest of his Torah? No. And then it wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. At first, he didn't feel this was his place. And when he did realize it was his place, and he absorbed and absorbed and absorbed, then when he went back home to his father-in-law's house, almost a year later, he had great opposition and suffering there from his in-laws, who were very disappointed that their illustrious son-in-law, this gem of a son-in-law, whatever the prize son-in-law, had joined what they viewed as a cult, the cult of Hasidus. It could have been so different.
Father was also already follower of Hasidus, so didn't his in-law knew that
no. So the whole point is the Baal Shem Tov told Reb Baruch to be very quiet and secret about it so the Alter Rebbe wouldn't know. So if his father-in-law had known, obviously the Alter Rebbe would have also known about his father. So no, Reb Baruch was doing the customs of the Baal Shem Tov and studying the Torahs of the Baal Shem Tov, but not in a way that people knew about, because he kept it a secret so his son shouldn't realize, because his son had to walk the road himself. And I'm saying to such a degree that his son married the daughters. His wife was a very holy woman, a very great tzaddikis, but his in-laws were very opposed to the Hasidic movement. And all of his relatives from his wife's side were very opposed to the Hasidic movement. And again, it didn't have to be that way. If Reb Baruch could have been open, like Rivka's saying, the Alter Rebbe would have known his road, and everybody would have known his road, and the only people that would have been interested in him as a son-in-law would have been people that had the same road. But it wasn't that way. So why? Why did the Baal Shem Tov do it this way? Why did God obviously want it to be this way? I think something that we can take from this, that I was thinking about today on this special day, is the value of our efforts. Our sages say in the Talmud, Yagata umatzata ta'amin, which means when you work hard and then you find, yes, that we believe, because everything valuable comes with a lot of effort, a lot of hard work. There's something very special about the things we acquire on our own, more meaningful, more internalized. We really take ownership of it when we are like forming it with our own hands. This is actually interesting because the Lubavitcher Rebbe selected 12 Torah verses and passages that he said every Jew should know. Every child should know, every adult should know. We say them daily. Now, what are these 12 passages? The Lubavitcher Rebbe selected 4 critical verses from all of Torah, 4 critical passages from all of Tanya, written by the Alter Rebbe, whose birthday we're celebrating, and 4 passages from all of Talmud. If you've ever seen a set of Talmud, I don't know if you ever have, but it's volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes. It takes up like 2 shelves in a very tall, so very tall shelves, but the width of 2 shelves in a standard bookshelf for sure, if not more. So pages and pages and pages, hundreds and thousands of pages. And from those thousands of pages, the Lubavitcher Rebbe selected 4 quotations, 4 ideas. So obviously what he's selecting must be critical, must be overarching huge messages for all of Judaism. And generally they are, except one of the 4 passages from Talmud is what I just quoted. Work hard and you will succeed, we believe. This is really the end of a little bit of a longer quote, which is if a person says, I worked hard and I didn't succeed, we don't believe them. If a person said, I didn't work hard and I succeeded, we don't believe them. If a person says, I worked hard and succeeded, we believe. So here's Lubavitcher Rebbe choosing 4 quotations from the entire Talmud. That's a nice quote. It has ethical, moral value we can relate to. But it's one of the 4 most significant ideas in all of Talmud for all the Jewish people, for every Jewish child and adult to know. Lubavitcher was saying, yeah, it is. It's that important. Our hard work, then you find. You work hard and then you succeed. It's interesting. The Hebrew is yagatu matzata. I don't know if any of you know the Yiddish word mitzia. Do any of you know the Yiddish word mitzia? Mitzia is a Yiddish word that means a bargain. Yagatu matzata.
Mitzvah.
A mitzia. Yeah, it's a mitzia. Mitzia means the bargain. So yagata, if you work hard, matzata, what you're going to find is going to be a bargain, meaning you're going to acquire something greater than all your efforts should produce. So this is such a foundational idea. We have to work hard in life. Of course, we all know that by now. We have to work hard, and then our effort produces. And I was thinking this is like thematically what the Alter Rebbe had to go through. He could have been gifted it, Prince of Torah on a silver platter, born into a Hasidic family, born into a family of adherents of the Baal Shem Tov, raised that way, know this is his road. He could have studied at the feet of the Baal Shem Tov. He could have married into a family like that. It could have been very simple. You didn't need any miracles for that to happen. That was the norm. Except the Baal Shem Tov said, no, I don't want him to do it that way. I want him to find me. I need him to find me. That's the type of relationship he has to have. Where have you seen this in your life? That the pieces you really had to work for, sweated over, those became the most precious pieces of your journey. Can you think of times in your life that it was really hard? It didn't come easy. And you had to work hard. And what happened then, either in your own growth or what you achieved or how you changed or what you accomplished, you have a different relationship to that than to other pieces of your life. Miriam is saying yes.
I understand the concept. I just can't come up with something.
You can't think of it. You don't see it in your life.
And I don't want it. I want things to be easier.
Amen. I agree. Miriam, what were you going to say?
I think all my life I have to work through obstacles in every way, in every step I had. I mean, it was a lot of effort to move on and so on.
Do you see that in some of those obstacles, because you worked hard, like what you achieved?
Yeah. I'm not done yet.
No, neither am
No.
I. And I don't think anyone here is done. As long as we're alive, we're not done. And as long as we're alive, we have challenges. But I agree with Rivka. Challenges can be with kindness and compassion. We always have challenges because if we're alive, we're supposed to be doing something. We're ticking, we're moving, we're growing, we're challenged. But we could have softer challenges and we could have more intense challenges. And we want the softer ones. We want ease. Yes, we want ease, and we should all have ease. And we bless ourselves on this holy day to have ease in our struggles. But Miriam says she can relate to the concept. Rivka says she gets it, but she can't think of it, which is beautiful. Rivka, Bella?
During your difficulties, they're difficult. But when when it's done, you accomplish it, and you look back, sometimes you say, it wasn't that bad. You always...
Maybe you're saying that because you are seeing it within the prism of how you changed and how you gained and how you grew. I mean, that's this famous saying of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe that I know I've quoted before because it's very dear to my heart. He said this after his incarceration, but he said, if before I was arrested and imprisoned, I could have bought off any minutes of suffering, I would have paid all the money in the world for it. But now, after I'm freed from this incarceration, if someone wanted to buy off of me some of those minutes, I wouldn't sell it for all the money in the world. So that is what is going on in our lives. And I agree with you. I think that could be what you're feeling. So getting back to this idea. So Miriam said, yeah, she relates. Rivka said she understands the concept, but doesn't really can't think of it in her own life. Anyone else can see it in their own life? The pieces that you work hard for, that you sweat over, these precious pieces in your journey. Anyone else? Because there's a certain gain. God is doing it deliberately. Anytime we are struggling, it's not an accident. It's deliberate from God. Not only Miriam's life and not only the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's. Every single one of us has struggles. Every single one of us have things that could have come easy but came hard. Have things that we have to work hard to acquire. Things that maybe look to us like everyone else has an easy time of, but we do not. And God has a gain by it being difficult. There's a gain. There's a different relationship we have to those things we acquired with our own efforts. And I'm sure all of us can really, if we think about this, can find in our own life things that didn't come to us so easy. And we worked hard for it. And when we mastered it, when we gained, when we changed, when we grew, we have a special advantage over people that maybe had it much easier. You know, I'm thinking now as I'm talking about a student of mine 30 some years ago. And she in some way had a very smart girl, but like had obviously some things that were different about her. Some nowadays we call it special needs. So she was very smart. And I remember at a certain point talking to her mother, and her mother said that this child and many of her other children have some issue. But this child, since she was from so long ago, the school made no accommodation. The school didn't know anything to help her. She was just stuck in the class like everyone else and had to sink or swim like everyone else. And her younger children, they already were in a more enlightened time, and the school was more knowledgeable about various needs, and the school did things to help the children and make it easier for them and make it work within their limitations. And the mother said to me, I don't know who had it better. This older child who had to carve it all out herself, but managed and did so, and has strengths because of that. And the younger children, that it was made easier for them, which was good, but then they don't have the same strengths because they're used to things being modified to make it work for them. I'm not going into that whole educational debate now, but I think it like resonates with this idea that in our life, when you think back to your life and you think back to the harder parts of your life, to the more challenging parts of your life, to the parts where you could say, God, you can't make it easier. You don't have the ability to make it simpler. You're making it so difficult. And God could be saying, I am making it more challenging. And it's coming from love. It's coming from an awareness of the potential you have and the desire for you to access your potential, the desire for you to gain and to grow and to develop the strengths, the muscles, the abilities that you develop when you're working hard with your own efforts. And that's really, I thought, a very relevant theme for all of us to reflect on. It sort of relates, say one more idea here, this sort of relates to a teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that what's hardest for us tells us why we're here. We learned this from the first man, Adam. He had gotten one commandment from God, don't eat from a certain tree. Now, he was not hungry. He was in a garden full of beautiful trees. He had to, for 3 hours, not eat from that one tree. And so to speak, he messed up. He ate. And of course, there's many deep reasons why, many Kabbalistic reasons why, many allegorical reasons why. But on a very simple reason, on a very simple, basic, foundational level, Lubavitcher Rebbe says he messed up because that was the reason he was in the world. So all the forces of temptation were fighting him on that one thing. And in our life, we have the same thing. There are things that are very challenging for us, and maybe challenging for anyone else. Maybe they're not as challenging for anyone else. They're challenging for us because our soul is here for these issues specifically. And that's why they're so hard, because that's why we're here, because they're so important. So I really was trying to think of something from the teachings of the Alter Rebbe or the Baal Shem Tov, something that I felt that really we could really apply and think about in our own life. And I feel this message is very, very relevant to us. And it's a way to reframe our own journey. And if, like Miriam said, and it probably is true for all of us on some level, we look back and reflect on the things that we had to acquire ourselves and weren't handed to us and were difficult for us. And obviously for everyone on this class, your road to God, you acquired on your own. Your relationship to God wasn't handed to you, even though you were raised by parents who instilled in you Judaism and who instilled in you a love for God and who made sure you married Jewish. But you still had to acquire your relationship to God yourself. And there's something special about that. There's something precious about that. There's something different about that than someone that just is born into it and naturally has it. And just as it's true, overarching about your totality of your relationship with God, I'm sure for each one of us, it's true about a lot of specifics in our life as well. And we look at those specifics and we look at the challenges and we look at why did God make it difficult when he could have done it differently, to reflect on this point. Maybe God wants us to gain something, and when we gain it on our own momentum, it's a completely, completely different energy.